Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Thursday Facebook Live. I'm Laura Hunter and this is Celeste Gagnon from Drop the Leash Dog Training. And we are here today to talk about how to make walks work. So we're going to go with our usual format, Celeste, where you pop up all the questions that we get from people about this, and I try and come up with some answers. And with your help as well on the answers. So let's go. What do we got first?
All right. Why do so many people have troubles with loose leash walking?
Okay. So yes, it is a difficult issue, and it is the number one thing that we hear about here. You know, if people are calling or if people talking in programs. And actually, I was just doing some silly calculations before we started, and I figured that if you have a dog that, say, makes it to the age of 10, and if you walk your dog once a day, you'll have gone on 3,000 walks throughout your dog's lifetime. And if you're really dedicated and you go twice a day or more, that's 6,000 walks. So I can see why it's a big issue for people, because it is a huge part of everybody's life, and everybody does have that fantasy. Well, it's not always a fantasy. For some people, it's a reality, but that dream of being able to go on these long, leisurely, walks through the forest or some other gorgeous area with their faithful dog at their side. So that is actually one of the biggest issues, because our expectations often clash with the reality of what's going on. So, we get a lot of requests from people, can you teach my dog to heel beside me for the entire walk? Or, can you teach my dog to walk right beside me without a leash? Because I've seen other people doing that. And I want my dog not to ever pull on the leash, no matter what they see out there. So those are pretty big expectations, and it is totally you should be totally able to figure out how to you and your dog can get along together. But notice I'm not saying how you and your dog can walk side by side or how your dog can heel, but it is, you can work things out, but this is something that's not accomplished overnight. And that's hard for humans as well, because we are impatient and we want to see training results right away. And it's especially tough if you have a young dog, an excitable dog, a social butterfly. Those are really tough. A dog that wants to meet everybody on the planet. Excuse me 1 second. You have to leave now. Go out. Or there go the excitable ones. Or you have a working dog that wants to go off and work, or a fearful dog. So actually, I think I just pretty much covered every type of dog. So no matter what, it's going to be challenging to get to that end goal. And the biggest issue, I think, is that people think that this is a specific skill that you train your dog to do. And we don't always stop to think it through, that this is actually a choice-based behavior. Because if your dog doesn't want to walk beside you, how, other than teaching them that there's value for that choice, you don't really have a lot of options. If you want to keep them beside you and they don't want to stay beside you, all you really have left is physical control. And that's not what we're looking for. And I think everybody out there who's having trouble realizes that that's not going to work. So it really is the dog's choice to stay beside you, just as it is in recall. It's the dog's choice to come back to you. And if they don't want to come back to you and they're not on a leash, what are you going to do about it? So it's not something that we can train the dog to do. We have to actually build value for them wanting to make that choice. And that is not quite as simple as people think it is. So I think there are a number of reasons why it's tough. All right, so.
Okay, so on that note, should your dog even have to walk beside you for most of a walk?
Okay, so now we are getting into opinion-based answers, which is how you and I feel about walks. And this is where those expectations can clash with the reality of you actually meeting your dog's needs on a walk. Mm-hmm. And you and I are both strongly of the opinion that no, our dog shouldn't have to walk beside us on a walk. And we don't ask our dogs to walk beside us on a walk.
Not the whole time.
Not the whole time. There are circumstances, and we're going to talk about those. But for the most part, you and I do not have dogs that, well, actually, I have one, but she's a bit of an anomaly. So I'm not asking her to be there. We'll talk about her too. So there are a number of reasons why your dog shouldn't have to walk beside you on a leash, for the entire walk. First of all, we're slow. We're not as fast as our dogs. I'm almost as fast as my dogs, but I'm really booting it. I walk fast anyway. Most people don't want to walk as fast as I do, so it's hard to keep up with them. We're boring. I go out there sometimes in the world and I see people walking and they're on their phones and their dog is just kind of there beside them. So we're not always really paying attention, and we're not that interesting to our dogs. We're not nearly as interesting as the world is to our dog. And so I think we have a bit of a thought that we are more interesting, but we're not. And, people think that dogs are bad dogs or they don't have any manners when they're pulling on leash. But the dogs are just trying to access something of massive value to them. And that's the outside world. Most of our dogs don't, honestly, I don't think they get outside in the world enough. And I'm not the only one that thinks like that. Kim Brophy had a podcast with Michael Shikashio this week where she talked about that as well. Our dogs are outdoor creatures. They were wild predators at one point. They lived outside 24/7. And now they're confined in houses largely, for a large part of their day, for most of the day. At this point, we humans should realize how tough it is to be confined indoors and stuck in our houses. And then when we do get outside, we're prevented from accessing all those activities that are necessary for our physical and mental health. Like I was devastated when they canceled Frisbee golf. No, just kidding. But look at all the people that are saying, my God, why can't we go out and golf? We need it for our mental health. It's not a dangerous thing. So, if we need to get out there and engage in activities that are good for us, so do our dogs. Even more so, I think, because they don't have TV in the house to watch. So we do that every day to our dogs. We keep them in the house and they don't get out enough to get that mental stimulation and that physical exercise.
Yeah. And I mean, for us, it's been 1.5 years-ish. For them, it's their entire life.
Ooh, good point. Yeah, exactly. It's sad. Yeah. And, I was going to talk about later, but I'll pop it in here, is that it is hard for people to get their dogs out for walks, probably as many times a day as they should. But, we try and get our guys out here twice a day. And I actually try for more than that. Even if you have to shorten them and take them out more often, I'm sure that's probably better for the dog. I know from, us being stuck in the house, I see stuff on the internet all the time from people who say, well, I just need, if I get out for that 2 or 3 minute break and walk around the block, I feel so much better. Our dogs are probably the same too. So it's a good thing for people to think, instead of, wow, I got my dogs out for a 4-mile walk this morning, but then they're in the house for the next 13 hours, is, shorten them up and scatter them throughout the day a little bit more. I think that might go a long way to
even just outside time. If you have a backyard, that helps as well.
Yeah. And you and I both know that we can give our dogs more mental stimulation in 5 minutes in the backyard than we can sometimes on a walk. So just get them out more. Just let them out in the world more. If you're out there. Yeah, yesterday I was cutting up trees that we'd taken down. So I just took 2 of them out and we practiced them doing a down out there while I was cutting up the trees. So, at least they're getting outside and they're getting that stimulation of just looking around. So there's one thing that we can do. Yep. Okay, what do we have next, Celeste?
What can we do so that we enjoy our walks as much as the dog? so that our dog doesn't drag us along for the entire walk.
Okay. Yeah. So now we're getting into some
I like this one.
nitty gritty solutions here. And that is a big, that is something I hear all the time, is that, you know, I don't want to be dragged everywhere by my dog. I know they have to get out and explore, but it's no fun for me. And if we're not having a good time, we're not going to get them out.
Yeah.
Much as I'm always on the dog side, I know that I do have to think about the humans in this case as well. So what is the answer? When you are working to change any behavior that you don't want, management is always your first strategy. And sometimes management is perfectly fine as a complete solution. And so in this case, you can use management as a complete solution to your walk. You know, management is always the first thing we put in place because it prevents the dog from practicing the behavior that works for them. So it does go a fair distance towards solving any issues that you have. In this case, what we're going to try and do is prevent the dog from pulling. So our recommendation here is always humane, no pull equipment that cuts down on your dog's ability to pull. And our number one recommendation to all of our clients is get a no pull harness. And we have some suggestions for that. The biggest reason that we recommend harnesses is because you don't, very rarely, I shouldn't say you don't have to all the time, because I have an email sitting in my inbox because I have a puppy right now that doesn't want anything to do with this harness. So it doesn't happen every time. But for the most part, you don't have to condition dogs to wear harnesses. Dogs are pretty accepting of harnesses, and they're pretty happy to let us put them on. Sometimes if you get a harness where you pull over the head, dogs aren't thrilled about that. I know Rosie was never happy when we used those ones, but nowadays you can get the harnesses that clip on just like a collar. So you just put it around their neck and clip it on. And, you know, we'll put up the resources. We'll put some links to our recommendations, but just to let everybody know, the two that we recommend are the PetSafe 3-in-1, and there's another one, the Harmony harness by an organization called T-Touch. The PetSafe 3-in-1 is the easiest one for people to access, and if you're local, I know that Chris Choi from Global Pets is now carrying them in his stores. Thank you very much on our recommendation. So they're in the Markham stores if anybody who's listening is local. But I also know you can get them on Amazon as well. And we'll give everybody the link to that. And those are the two that we recommend the most. I don't even want to talk about how much money I've spent on harnesses over the years and where I've ordered harnesses from. And the best two I found are right in our backyard virtually. They're super adjustable. They're really comfortable for every dog, really easy to fit them. And I like the style because it's a clip-on collar. And on those harnesses, the chest strap comes down vertically between the legs, clips up behind the dog's front legs. Really nice style. And we'll talk a little bit more about the features in a minute. But I had a question this morning, actually, from a puppy client. And because I was talking about this on our Zoom last night, and she asked me why I didn't address or I didn't talk about head halters for dogs. And I know there are people out there that use head halters and they work really well for them. When my dogs were younger, I did use a head halter. I used a specific type called a snoot loop. And I like the snoot loops because they were loose on the dog's nose. And the dog, if they pulled, it tightened. But if they stopped pulling, they were able to release the pressure. So there was a bit of a learning component to that. Most of the head halters I see don't release pressure. They're clipped and they're tight under a dog's nose. So, you know, honestly, most dogs aren't big fans of having something strapped over their nose. So you really have to take the time to condition the dog to wear it. And most owners don't have the patience or the knowledge on how to condition a dog to really like to wear one of those. And, you know, I did. I conditioned my dogs. They kind of put up with them. Did I ever see them joyously saying, "Oh my God, great, we're going for a walk. You're going to put that thing on my nose"? No. Um, Again, let's talk about the fact that all of us are really fed up wearing masks this last year. And, you know, I know there are a lot of people that don't like wearing masks, and they are annoying. And you know, they're just something that sits fairly lightly on our face. Imagine how we'd feel if somebody, every time we walked around, somebody yanked on our mask. It would, you know, we wouldn't be happy at all. And that's part of the problem as well, is that unfortunately we humans have a tendency to yank on those leashes. So not only is the dog wearing something that's strapped over its nose, they often have an owner who with a tendency to want to yank when they pull. So I'm not a big fan of them. I don't think they're really something that is positively reinforcing for your dog. But on the other hand, I know, as I said, that I have clients who have taught their dogs to wear them, and the dogs seem to be okay. I think they've habituated to them. I just find that the harnesses are much more comfortable for the dog. All right.
Okay. All right. Are all harnesses the same? Will they all prevent pulling?
Yeah. So no, all harnesses are not created equal. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think the majority of harnesses that they sell in the pet stores are back ring harnesses, because I certainly see more people on back ring harnesses than front ring harnesses. Back ring harnesses do absolutely nothing to stop your dog from pulling. In fact, they help them to pull harder. Even today, I was out with Rosie and Annie in the forest, and I just quickly hooked Rosie up to her harness on the back ring, because I think there were turkeys or something out there, and I just wanted to be careful. And she did take a run out at whatever it was, and even for little Rosie, I was shocked at how much more of impact there was when she hit the end of that line than there ever is on that front ring. Yeah. So back ring harnesses do help dogs pull harder, because they can just get their shoulders into them and pull. On a front ring harness, what happens is, if it's fitted properly, it does have to be fitted properly. And I'm talking about the harnesses where it comes around the dog's neck and it comes straight down in the front of their chest. I'm not talking about the ones that go horizontally across their shoulders, because they are not as effective. But if the ring is properly situated and the harness is properly fitted, when the dog pulls on the ring, it actually redirects them. It turns them back to the owner. So it significantly lessens the pulling. Much better. And those are the ones that we're using, the Pet Safe 3-in-1 and the T-Touch.
I just want to, can I add a note about the ones that go across the shoulders too?
Yeah. They're
actually not very good for their structure.
No.
Overall. So that's another negative, just physically.
Yeah, I think they actually impede their shoulder movement.
It does, yeah. You won't have a full range of movement there, which is why I like the 3-in-1.
Yeah, and when normally, and those rings don't hold in the center.
Yeah.
So I see them. I see a lot, because we have some clients that use them, and the ring ends up over by the shoulder.
Yeah.
And it does absolutely nothing to lessen the pull.
Yeah.
So even the well-fitted front rings, they're not going to stop the pulling completely, but they certainly cut down on it. Mm-hmm. You know, Annie's out there on her front ring, and Annie pulls, but she doesn't pull significantly on the front ring. So I'm totally able to cope with that and still enjoy my walk. It's not a problem. Yeah. And the third option, because both of the harnesses that we've recommended have a back ring as well, is that you can actually, if you're in a situation where your dog is a heavy puller, you can actually clip up to both the front and the back ring. And if you, what you need is you either use 2 short leashes, 2 6-foot leashes, or if you have a longer leash, you can use a carabiner to clip the handle of your leash to the back ring. So, and there is a certain way in which to hold the two, so you end up with a loop a loop attached to both contacts on the harness. I think Celeste is drawing me a picture of that. Are you?
No, I'm writing a note to say later.
Okay. And then there's a certain way to actually hold them, almost like the reins of a horse. I'll use my phone cord. So I just hold and hook over my thumbs like I'm holding reins. And it is really quite amazing how much that cuts down on the pulling. In fact, some dogs don't pull again. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to go into huge technical explanation of this, because I think on our YouTube channel, we've got videos of this, so you can access that information for free on our YouTube channel. Yeah. But it definitely does cut down the pulling. We've had Leon Burgers in the program. We've had big dogs, and we've been able to hold them on lines. So I use it. I don't use it for the whole walk. I think that's a little overkill for certainly for my dogs. But if you know, Annie gets on a coyote track in the middle of the winter on the ice, it certainly saves my bacon, that's for sure. So sure, what are we doing next, Celeste?
Do you need a specific leash to do this, and which is the best leash to have?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we also have very strong opinions about leashes, you and I. And there's nothing in life I probably hate as much as 4- and 6-foot leashes. When I found out they were selling 4-foot leashes in PetSmart, I wanted to bang my head against the wall. It's not just PetSmart; they sell them everywhere now. I don't know why you would need a 4-foot leash. The thing is that if your dog's on a 4-foot leash or a 6-foot leash, and they want to just go and sniff a tree at the side of the trail, they're already pulling on you. Yeah. And then both of you are starting to get frustrated. So we love 10-foot leashes. We use them here with our dogs. You and I actually use 15s as well. But, you know, for somebody walking in an urban area or even out here, 10 foot is great. Sometimes if you're not used to handling long leashes and long lines, you can really trip yourself up with a 15. But 10 is perfect for double clipping. You know, as I said, you're not going to walk your dog for an entire walk on a double clip, I hope, because we're going to show you how to fix that with cookies instead. But definitely you can, you know, if you're in a situation where you really need control of your dog, a 10-foot leash hooked on 2 points is more than enough, you know. We have a number of people in our program who do walk on 10-foot leashes now. And we've heard from them that it has changed their walks quite radically, because 10 feet give your dog enough opportunity to go off and smell and explore things, you know, just around you, that they're happy and you're not getting pulled over, you know, because they can have that little bit of freedom. So it's amazing what a difference an extra 4 feet make.
Yeah. So I have 2 things for this.
Okay.
One, for those of you like me who live in a suburban area where the bylaw says you have to be on a 6-foot leash or less, I still have the long leash, but you hold it in a way that generally for most of the time they have 6 feet, and then you let it go loosely so they can go to the tree, and then you bring them back kind of thing into the 6 feet position. So there's workarounds that. And somebody asked about flexi leashes.
Okay.
How do you feel about flexi leashes, Laura?
I don't feel very good about flexi leashes, Celeste. You know, there's nothing like the feel of a good leash. Mm-hmm. And I always think of the leash as a communication tool with your dog. It definitely is. You can communicate with your dog by how you handle your leash. A flexi leash is, to me, it's like carrying a suitcase. There's just no feel to it. If you have your dog on the option where they get to come in and go out and the leash retracts, the dog is never going to feel what a loose leash feels like, because there's always going to be tension on the leash. If you let your dog out to the end of it, and you lock it so I think the leash is totally locked so that the length is locked. I've seen so many people, not the people actually, I've seen so many dogs wrap themselves around other people and objects and trees and whatnot at the end of that leash. And it's like, how do you bring it in? It's just awkward. It doesn't give a good feel, and they're dangerous. If you want to Google injuries from Flexi Leashes on the internet after this, you'll see some horrendous pictures. People have actually lost their fingers because if that snaps, that does a lot of damage. But it doesn't teach your dog anything, and it's super awkward. You were talking about pulling your leash in, shortening it up, and letting it out. That's so easy. So much easier, so much smoother than trying to retract. I have enough trouble with tape measures. I can't imagine using a Flexi leash.
The other thing with being able to control the leash manually instead of having the retractable one is that, like you said, it's a communication with your dog. So you're much more aware of how they're feeling and what's going on if you have a leash like that instead of a Flexi leash.
Yeah, and here's another point I just thought of. Never thought of it before. Is that you and I use the rubber 10-foot leashes. We love those rubber 10-foot leashes. We use them. They're about 5/8 of an inch. They've got nubbies on them. People love them. We order them in bulk here. We can pass a bit of a savings on to people who are interested in them. But I can also put up the link to where to buy those. They're not inexpensive, but they're fantastic. And what I often do with my dogs is when I'm out in the forest is I drop the lines so that they can go a little further and explore, because I know they're not going anywhere. And they can drag those rubber lines, or if you're using biothane, they can drag those too. I can't imagine a dog dragging a Flexi leash along. It just doesn't seem safe at all.
So that's something that, because before I knew anything, I had a Flexi leash for my Golden when she was a puppy. And she hit the end of that once, and I wasn't expecting it. And that handle went flying towards her and hit her. Yeah. And that was like devastating to her and to me, and and then she took off, so it kept bouncing into her as she was running. Like it's just
they're awkward. We've seen people try to use them in class. We tell people not to use them in class. We usually give them one of our rubber ones, and then we can totally change their way of thinking, because the rubber ones have give and they feel great. So we're just going to take Flexi leashes off the table, if that's okay. I could go on and on, but we probably don't need to, So, put your dog on a longer line if you can, because let them go and sniff and explore the world, because that's really what it means to be a dog, is to get out there and sniff, because sniffing is how they get information and how they connect with the rest of the world. So I am not a fan of asking a dog to walk beside me through the entire walk, especially if I'm not prepared to engage with them while they're doing it. To me, when people request that, I hate to seem critical, but it seems like more of an ego thing on the part of the human, is I need this dog to be beside me because, I don't know, they should just be listening to me and paying attention to me, for the entire walk. No, they need to get out in the world and just be a dog. So, yeah. All right. So what do we got next?
How do you train your dog not to pull?
Okay. So first of all, you must always keep it in your head that it is a choice-based behavior. It's not about us training a behavior. It's about us teaching our dogs, not teaching our dogs. It's about us providing enough value for our dogs that they actually choose to hang out around us. And it's such a funny thing, because in most people's heads, I think when your dog is pulling, and I totally get that this is a normal thought, is how do I teach this dog not to pull? But it is really hard to describe to a dog who is, dogs don't, they are pretty much toddlers, and they're pretty black and white. What does not pulling look like to a dog? If your dog's on a 10-foot leash, how are we going to teach them that they only go 9.5 feet so that they don't pull? If you think about it, like that, it's just ridiculous. We can't teach them that, especially if your dog wants to go and investigate something. Oh my God, I want to go sniff the tree, but I can only go if it's 9.5 feet away from me. We can't do this. And I know that there are a lot of techniques out there on the internet, And I remember when I first got my dogs, this is with some of these guys. No, it was my previous dogs. And, you look up these techniques. And one of them was that when your dog pulls, you simply stop. And then your dog, eventually, releases tension, or they come back to you and you move on. Issues with that is that it's really frustrating because you never get anywhere. And dogs don't learn as well from correction, because it is basically a correction. They learn much faster from positive reinforcement, because we're reinforcing for something that they can actually do rather than something that they shouldn't do. And the other thing is, I know this because I think it was Annie that I did it with. She would pull, I would stop. She would just keep pulling at the end of the leash. She didn't care. And I thought, oh, she's still accessing everything she wants in the world. She's looking at the squirrels. She's smelling everything. She's seeing stuff. There's no downside for her. The only downside there was for me. So it's not effective. So it's much more effective for building value every time your dog comes close to you. And you can capture a lot of that in the beginning. Again, we're not going to go into a lot of techniques, because there's a whole whack of stuff up on our YouTube. We have a whole bunch of games on YouTube for teaching for building value for your dog coming in close to you. So I'm not going to go into all of those. But you can simply, when you're out there, if you're paying attention to your dog, every time they turn if I'm the dog, every time I turn my head and look back at my owner, just reinforce that. Go, yeah, good dog. Here's a cookie. You look back at me. If the dog comes close to you, reinforce that. If the dog stops and releases tension on the leash, reinforce that. Eventually, they're going to start to think, wow, if I pay more attention to my owner, if I look back at them, if I show up next to them, I always get good stuff. It's naturally going to happen. It's classical. It's position feeding. It's what we call position feeding. And dog starts to think, wow, every time I show up beside Celeste, I get a whole bunch of good stuff. Not one, but a couple of good cookies or a bunch of cookies. Oh my God, I think I should show up there more often. That's classical conditioning, and it's a pretty powerful way to train. And there's no cue on it. You don't need a cue on it. That's how Rosie's a bit, as I said, a bit of an anomaly. But she's such a foodie that's totally how I taught her to walk beside me. And she'll walk 5 miles beside me in hopes of getting a cookie. Her choice. I'm not telling her to do it or not to do it. It's just her choice. So if being close to you predicts good stuff on a walk, that's where your dog's going to start to hang out. It's going to take a while. And there are some steps to it. And we're going to walk you through those steps so that you have an idea of how the process works. But it totally works. It's how you taught Penny, right?
Yeah.
And Gimli. Yeah.
And Gimli.
Yeah. We have 5 dogs who pretty much walk on decent loose leashes and hang out with us when we walk, just by reinforcing them for showing up. So all of the games we have out there on the YouTube channel show you how to reinforce your dog for just showing up. So go play those guys. However, some training tips. The last place to try and teach this is when you're out on a walk in the beginning. So play it at home. You can even start this in the house. People go, oh my God, you could start loose leash walking in the house? Absolutely. And the cool thing about starting in the house is that you don't have to have your dog on a leash. So, because it's not going anywhere, just do it in a room. So it is really effective to teach your dog to walk beside you without a leash. Because you're not getting the leash all tangled up. You're not having to deal with that. You're not out there fighting the distractions and having them hit the end of the leash. You're just in the house playing a game where every time you go for a walk across your living room, you just walk around your living room, your dog shows up beside you, you just feed them. And I like it that you can start without a leash, because we do believe in off-leash work in safe places for our dogs. Definitely for agility, you need a dog who can walk beside you off-leash. I think I watched I think it was Chris, one of our puppy owners. I think on our Good Pup page, there's a video of him doing that with Spen. And so that's something you can start with a puppy. You know, just playing short games where, you know, your dog shows up beside you and you feed them a bunch of cookies and you go, yeah, good dog. Wow. You engage with your dog. You engage with your dog. That is another training tip, is that if you, well, you agree with me on this, I think, Celeste. If our dogs are walking beside us on loose leashes, or if they're walking beside us without a leash, we are totally engaged with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I do not expect my dogs to walk beside me on a loose leash if I am not paying attention. And engagement and focus from the owner is often just as reinforcing as the cookies we're feeding. So engage with your dog when they do it. Definitely. Don't just feed them cookies. You can, you know, toss the cookies. You can be excited about the cookies. You can be excited and, you know, change directions and have fun with it. So play it as a game when you start it in the house, because we want our dogs to be happy to do it. And then take it out to the backyard. Hopefully, you know, if you have a contained backyard, that's a safe place to try it as well. You can play it, you know, off leash in the backyard. Know that when you do start to take it out on a walk, you are seriously competing with the world. And so you have to make this really easy for your dog somehow. So definitely higher value reinforcement in the beginning, because it is more effort from your dog to actually engage with you. You are not nearly as exciting as the squirrels or any other, you know, species out there. And so what you want to do is make it a lot shorter. It's better to get 5 happy steps beside you than it is to try and struggle for 15, 20, 30 feet. And I remember starting my guys who used to walk out in the road, I actually literally would start with 5 steps. And I would be totally engaged and go, yeah, yeah. And I'd be feeding. And when we were finished our 5 steps, I would give my dogs a go sniff cue. And this is a good thing to do, because we don't give our dogs enough information on walks. So your dog really needs to know when you need them beside you and when they can go, because otherwise it's just too confusing. So always, and the go sniff cue was even more reinforcement for those 5 steps beside me. So what we're doing is we're actually using the distractions in the environment. We're not looking at it as a frustration or as a competition. We're actually using it as a reinforcement. It's called the pre-met principle. So if you give me 5 great steps of loose leash walking, I'm going to let you go sniff. So you got lots of reinforcement when you're walking, and you get to go to do what you really want to do, which is go sniff on that tree over there. So it definitely, it does work, but you have to remember that in the beginning, there will be a lot less loose leash walking and a lot more go sniffing. And that's going to eventually one day change around, but it's going to take time. You know, that's going to take a lot of time, because that is really tough. All right. Okay.
So what should a walk look like?
Well, that's it. Oh, this is like a big philosophical discussion. Actually, I had an interesting thought about that. I think it was in last fall, and we started walking a lot more out in the forest last fall. And I wanted Rosie to be able to go sniff. And Rosie's a bit of I think she's a city girl. She doesn't have a whole lot of interest in going to sniff. And Annie I wanted Annie not to pull so much, because Annie likes to walk out in front. Like, she definitely likes to be out in front. So here I was getting really frustrated with Rosie because she wasn't going to sniff. Rosie, actually, this is really bad, because most people would kill for what Rosie does, which is she walks beside me the entire walk and just looks at me. I don't ask for it, but I want her to go sniff. I want her to get some sort of, you know, enrichment out there. And so I got totally frustrated, because I thought Annie was pulling a bit too much and Rosie wasn't going anywhere. And then finally I stopped one day and like smacked myself upside the head and I said, why don't I just give them what they want? So I took Rosie's leash off, and because I kept tripping over it because she wouldn't go anywhere, and I hooked it onto Annie's. So Annie had another 15 feet. She was totally happy and stopped pulling. She was 30 feet out from me. I guess that's her personal space thing. And Rosie just kept walking beside me, but I wasn't continuing to say, go sniff, and I wasn't tripping over her leash and getting upset with her because I was. So I gave them what they wanted. And I think that's what we want to do with our dogs. We want to give them what they want and need as much as possible. And so that's where the equipment comes in, the no pull equipment. That's where the games and the training come in. But I don't think I've said this before, we'll say it again, you and I don't care if our dogs are walking beside us. We can get them there when we need them, but otherwise we just pretty much let them go, you know. So if you need to do it with management, with a double ring, or with, you know, a front ring harness, that's totally fine. You know, if you want to put the time in to play the games out there and get to the point, get out of the house, get out of the yard, and get to the point where you can play the games on the walks, you and I always include games on our walks. So it's a bit of a balance. I don't want to have to play games with my dogs the entire walk. I don't want to have to be totally engaged with them the entire walk. So we play the games build value for us, and then we go off the clock with a cue so we can all have some downtime. And I find that works really well. I always reinforce check-in because I want my dogs not to turn off the entire walk. I want them to turn and acknowledge me that I am there during the walk. And I practice emergency recalls out there because we run into a lot of different critters. We ran into a coyote the other day. I want that emergency recall. And sometimes we do practice the magic hand for walking beside. We do the 1, 2, 3 game. You know, so I like to balance it out. I like them to know that there are times when they can check in and focus on me, and there are times when they're off the clock, and I give them very clear cues as to when those times are. So that's what I do. I'm in the forest. You know, what do you do? You're out in an urban
so
area.
I'm just letting you know there's a delivery, so if the doorbell goes, I'm going to mute. Oh.
You have to go? Okay, but you can talk to us when you come back. I will talk about puppies while you're getting the delivery. So lots of puppies through our program this year. And so lots of question, how do you walk a puppy? Is it different than it is for an adult dog? Not necessarily. Most of my puppies are now wearing front ring harnesses. A lot of them are wearing that double ring harness. I know that it goes down to a certain size, and then for very tiny puppies, probably not. But I know that Global Pet Foods is really good at, they have other harnesses, they're really good at fitting them. So we definitely suggest harnesses because puppies don't know when to stop pulling, and the pulling can actually damage the neck structure and blood vessels in the neck. So I know that Rosie, if she pulls even slightly on a collar, she will choke and she will cough for quite a while afterwards. So it's definitely, you don't want your puppy pulling like that. What does a walk look like for a puppy? And for me, what I try and tell my puppy clients is put your dog on a long line. You can go and buy a cheap long line from the dollar store for young puppies, or, you know, some of our older puppies now have some of our biothane and rubber leashes. But I didn't put my dogs on shorter leashes. I had them on long lines till they were a year old, because what we want for puppies out there in the world is just for them to go out and explore and learn and assimilate and condition to new experiences. And that can be tough for some puppies. So they need the time just to wander around and explore and habituate to things out there in the world. It's not about your puppy walking for miles on a leash. And I know for all of the people with biting puppies, it's really tempting to try and tire them out. But you can tire your puppy out more effectively if you just give them some mental stimulation, let them sniff, play a few games with them on the leash. If you walk and walk and walk and walk, I know because I did it once. My husband bought a Malamute puppy, and I swear to God, we walked that thing 12 miles a day because it never tired out, and it never did tire out. So just give them a chance to explore the world, give them a chance to sniff, play a couple of games if you want, and bring them home because their brains will be calm and their bodies won't be overtired. And I know that I've had several owners who were pretty frustrated the first few times they took their puppies out in the world, and I would hear they don't want to walk. I can't get them to go anywhere. They're stubborn. They don't want to walk. Usually when I hear that a puppy doesn't want to go anywhere, I think that they are just overwhelmed. We forget how safe the home is because they spend so much time in it with their families. The world is not always regarded as safe. There's so many new things that could potentially be scary. Just so much stimulation out there that they can be overwhelmed. They can get nervous. They can be unsure. So you just need to get, and especially when I hear that people say, well, we can't get them to go anywhere, but as soon as we turn for home, they're like booking it for home. So to me, that's a puppy who's more comfortable in the house and feels safer in the house. So you have to be super patient and realize that it's not about how far you go or how fast you go. It really is just about letting your puppy feel safe, because number one rule for puppies is that they have to feel safe and they have to know that we will keep them safe. And if we push them into situations where it's going to cause them stress, they will start to not trust us, and they will start to not trust the whole process of going out in the world for a walk. So just be patient and know that I haven't heard of too many dogs on the planet that didn't eventually just get up and go for a walk, because going for a walk is super fun eventually, but you've got to give them time to sort of get with the program. So Celeste, can we go back to you, because you and I walk in very different worlds. I am the forest and you are the sidewalk.
The sidewalk.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so I do things very similarly to you, except she has to stay closer for longer sections of time because there isn't that space for a long loose walk. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of dogs, there's streets, so many reasons, fences. So the sidewalk, you only have like 5 or 6 feet to walk in kind of area. So I will play games with her on the sidewalk. I'll be really engaging for the sidewalk portion. And then when we get to a corner or a green belt, that's her go sniff time. And she's almost come to recognize that, where the sidewalk kind of ends or where the field starts, she knows. She just waits and looks at me, and she knows I'm going to be told here to go sniff. So we vary it. So I have the tight areas are interactive playtime, and then the fields is go and sniff, and for Gimli, go and pee on everything because that's what he likes to do.
You also had a really good idea the other night when we were doing the Zoom for the reactive dog program, because we were trying to come up with ideas for where they could go. And it's something that most people don't think about, but you said that you are quite happy to take Penny to a parking lot.
Yeah.
And
I love parking lots.
and I don't think most people think that off the top of their head that taking their dog to a parking lot is a really great idea.
Yeah.
But we have to stop and think that our dogs don't really care what they're sniffing or where they're sniffing. They just want to sniff.
They want variety.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love parking lots. I know. I get laughed at for that. I love parking lots.
No, but it is quite brilliant. It really is quite brilliant. And you're right. Variety does matter. Variety it's interesting because even out in the forest, we found a new trail the other day. And now every time we go through the forest, Annie just turns off on the new trail, and she's more excited to go off on the new trail because here we are in this gorgeous forest. But even for her, just finding a new place to go is super exciting.
Yeah.
The downside is that they pull more when you introduce them to new places, but the upside is you can work with it. And the fact that they're pulling more means they're a bit more engaged and they're a bit more excited about it. So novelty is good for dogs. Yeah.
So I find, because I try not to make my walks routine.
Yeah.
And I'll often let Penny kind of pick which way we're going to turn. So it's always different. But because I think I do that all the time, she doesn't pull quite as much. She just kind of like leads me a certain way, but it's not like a real pull.
Yeah. And that's and that's a really good training tip, because we're kind of limited. We don't go to the public forest. We have a private forest, but we're limited to the one trail. It's a long trail. We put in about 6 miles a day, but it gets to be fairly standard unless we find a flock of turkeys or something else running from us. But my guys do get more excited when they see anything new. So it is a good idea out on your walks to always be going eventually into new places, as long as you understand that you will have to make, if you're going to work on any of your training games, you have to make them easier in a new situation, because your dog will be more distracted in new situations. So go immediately back to a previous step, or even think of just starting over from scratch and pretend they've never learned it, because really they don't know it in that situation.
Right.
So it's very hard for dogs to generalize to new situations. It's just too exciting. So just always don't get frustrated. Just go back and make it easier. And that's a good one to remember. So do we have any questions? Are there any questions up there, Celeste?
We have lots of comments. Does biting the leash stop when the puppy stops? When the puppy biting stops?
Oh, if that's one of my puppy students, there's a video going up.
I'm thinking it might be.
You mentioned that.
Funny, we were talking about that this morning. Yeah,
we were talking about that. I'm going to put up a video for leash biting.
So there's agreement about expecting the dog to stay with us is not fair or fun for the dog.
No,
that's nice. It's nice to see people with that attitude.
Yeah, I think everybody's changed. I think back in the old days, you either totally ignored your dog and let them pull you around the neighborhood, or you demanded that they walk beside you. I think we're all starting to understand that we need to give and take and give them more opportunity for enrichment. Yeah.
How to stop dogs from chasing cars and squirrels and bicycles. So again, that goes back to being more engaging than the environment. And then you have other ideas, but that's more specific. So
and to be honest, that is that's something that we can't answer in a couple of sentences.
It's too complicated.
That's a process, and we do help people with that process in our programs for sure. But that's almost a training. That's like one of our training classes.
It is.
Yeah.
How do you do the go sniff cue?
I just say go sniff, and then I ignore my dog.
Exactly.
And Rosie doesn't. That's actually a good question. I shouldn't laugh, but it is a good question, because it was very challenging for me to teach my dogs to go sniff in the beginning, because being like completely whacked out herding dogs, they want to play the game. So they used to bounce up and down in front of me on the trail going, let's play. And I'm going, no, I want to look at the trilliums. So I had to be very consistent that when I said go sniff, nothing happened. And again, we go back to Rosie. I actually took a video of it. I might put it in the comments this morning. It's like a 10-second video, and Annie's out there in the distance, and Rosie's like beside me going, it's coming. There's going to be a cookie coming. I just know. But Rosie has no go sniff cue. But that's her choice. If she wants to stay with me, that's her choice. But when I say go sniff, I'm not paying attention to her, and I'm not reinforcing her for being beside me. And I know that sounds horrifying. But she doesn't have a lot of balance in her life at this point. Yeah. And actually, she is getting better at going. She occasionally goes and sniffs something.
Yeah.
It's usually something she wants to roll in, so then I have to call her out of it. But she is getting better at kind of detaching. It's her choice. It's her choice. But you have to be pretty consistent. Once you say go sniff, you're off the clock.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's good to teach in the backyard. If you're playing with your dog and you tell them go sniff. Sometimes dogs have a hard time making a transition from engagement with you to going off the clock, to turning off. So what I always used for the transition was I just would throw out a couple of pieces of kibble for them to scatter feed. And then, I'd say go sniff, throw out a few pieces of kibble, and then I would walk on. So that helped them make that transition. To disengage. It does help. So you might have to do that as well. Okay, anything else, Celeste, or are we okay to go?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Well, if anybody does have any questions, just stick them in the comments, and I'll go through the comments and answer them if I can in the comment. Sometimes, as we said, it's a little more complicated, and we can't always answer in a short comment like that, but we try our best. And if you guys have and don't forget to go and see our YouTube channel.
That's what I was going to say.
There's lots of stuff on the YouTube channel. Yeah. We've got a number of activities there, not just for loose leash walking, but there's stuff for counter conditioning and nail trims and how dogs learn. So there's lots of free stuff up there for you guys. So go help yourselves and have some fun with the activities. And hopefully we'll be back next Thursday with another Facebook Live. If anybody has anything that they specifically would like us to talk about, throw that in the comments as well, because we're always looking for new ideas, and we'd like to talk about stuff that people actually care about. So put it in the comments. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks, Celeste, for being with us today as well. And everybody go have some fun with our activities, and we'll talk to you next week, hopefully. Take care.